All right, we can get underway. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our pre-camp webinar before we get to see you outside Phoenix, Arizona next Monday and Tuesday. On behalf of everyone at Headfirst, we're excited to meet you all in person from a safe distance, get to connect with you live out there in Arizona. I know that we're working against another important panel competitively tonight in terms of what's on television, so I appreciate you guys all taking the time to be with us this evening. I'm hoping that this one is probably going to be a little bit less contentious than the one that you'd be watching on C-SPAN, watching the highlights of later on. So thank you for taking the time. I know you all have busy things going on, busy falls, busy schedules. We appreciate you taking the time to hop on and get all your questions answered. Before we dive in with this webinar, I'd love to give a quick overview of the agenda for the evening. After some quick introductions to our team that you'll be hearing from this evening on the webinar, we're then going to talk a little bit about how to prepare for camp, both logistically and what to expect schedule-wise, and then also from a recruiting standpoint, what are the things you can do between now and camp, at camp, and then after camp to really help this make some strides in your recruiting process as well. And then we're going to dedicate the bulk of the evening and as much time as is possible and as is needed to a live Q&A. So you should all see next to where you found that hand raise icon. We did the sound test a little bit ago. A questions tab is a GoToWebinar toolbar. If you have questions that come up over the course of the evening, feel free to type them in there, press send. We'll be answering some of them one-off via that chat function, but a lot of them we will also hold and reserve to that end, and we'll really answer any and all questions that come in. So feel free to fire those away over the course of the presentation this evening as well. Jenna, take it away with your introduction.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna Orlando. I oversee the operations for our Headfirst honor roll camps. After graduating from Lafayette College 3 years ago, where I was fortunate enough to play softball, I immediately began working for the Headfirst companies. I took an opportunity to do a rotational program, which then ended up pivoting me into focusing all of my time towards our honor roll camps division. I'm definitely looking forward to getting back on field next week and meeting all of you in person then.
Thank you, Jenna. And my name is Max McKenna. I'm our Senior Manager of Marketing within the Headfirst Honor Roll and the Showcases division that we do here at Headfirst. I graduated from Amherst College in 2011, where I played baseball for 4 years. After my time at Amherst, I went into high school teaching and coaching for a handful of years, first up at Phillips Andover Academy, where I was a teaching fellow in history and an assistant baseball coach to a great baseball program up there, and then took a full-time job as a history teacher and head baseball coach at a small private school outside New York City. I came back to Headfirst full-time 6.5 years ago now, how time flies, in 2014, and I've been working really closely with this division ever since, and families like you all to make sure that you're finding the right recruiting opportunities. Those are the two voices that you're going to hear from this evening. Now, I want to take a bit of time and introduce some of the other folks that you'll be meeting on site in Surprise, Arizona next week as well. First up is Brendan Sullivan. Brendan is the founder and president of the Headfirst Company's DC native, where he had a standout high school baseball career, went to Stanford out west, where he graduated in 3 years, had a great career there, ended up getting drafted in the 26th round by the Padres, played up through AAA with the Padres, spring training with the Texas Rangers, and founded Headfirst during some of those off seasons, starting with pitching lessons and impacting young lives on the baseball field, and then has really grown Headfirst into what it is now, its current footprint, through kind of focusing on life skills and life goals that you bring about through athletics, and also obviously with a heavy focus on the recruiting process for high academic baseball players, like the one that he went through as well. Additionally, another friendly face that you'll be seeing on site in Phoenix is our camp advisory partner. We work with a company called Diamond College Advisory Team, or DCAT. DCAT is a college advisory program for high academic student athletes in baseball, softball, and soccer. And what they aim to do is work really hands-on with student athletes and families through the recruiting process to really help you guys narrow down and find the right fit, both academically and athletically, and then also use this recruiting process to multiply the opportunities for you at the next level. When we are in Arizona, we'll be joined by Justin Kronk, who's the founder and executive director of DCAT. Justin was also a former Mammoth, a former Lord Jeff at Amherst College, where he was a two-sport athlete where he played football and baseball. After college, he pursued his master's in sports management at UMass right down the road, and then went into college coaching for a handful of years. You see there worked at Amherst College, at BC, at UNC Asheville, at Shenandoah, and then for the last 2 decades or so has really focused on taking that experience as a student athlete and as a college coach and helping bring that to bear for families like yours that are going through this recruiting process, now that he has sat on kind of both sides of the desk, so to speak, and both sides of those recruiting conversations, bringing that experience to help unravel some of the mysterious process that can be high academic recruiting. Now I'd love to dive straight into some of the preparing for camp and logistics. So Jenna, you want to take it away?
For sure. So we feel super lucky to have been able to lock in Surprise Stadium in Surprise, Arizona for next Monday and Tuesday, October 5th and 6th. To give you a sense of how much time you'll be spending at the Surprise Complex, we've laid out the arrival times on this slide. What we've decided to do is split the camp in half. Therefore, for both days of camp, you will either arrive in the morning or the afternoon wave. If you're in the AM wave, your check-in will begin at 6:30 a.m. on day 1 and on day 2. And if you're in the PM wave, your check-in will begin at 11:30 a.m. on day 1 and day 2. Each group can anticipate being on site for about 5 to 6 hours or so each day. To go into a little more depth on the wave assignments, we've decided to split the group in order to limit the number of people on site for safety reasons. If you're assigned to the AM wave on day 1, like I mentioned earlier, this will also apply to day 2. With that being said, we totally understand there are hardline factors like travel plans that can impact which wave you'd like to be in. Within our pre-camp email that's going to be sent tomorrow, there will be a request form for you to just let us know if you have travel plans that we need to accommodate for. So here we have an overhead view of this top-notch facility we'll be running at. The most valuable pieces of this map to focus in on are the following: the parking lot. So the parking lot that will be in use for our event is on the North Parkview Place side of the facility. The address to Surprise Stadium is North Bullard Avenue, so putting it in Google Maps will most likely lead you to that stadium side of the facility. But our program will solely take place on the 2 fields within the red box on your screen. So this will be super important to know on the morning on Monday morning as you roll up to the stadium wondering where honor roll camp is. Just make sure you circle around to the western side of this map or North Parkview Place. Otherwise, the nitty-gritty details of where to be when on site will be well communicated on site by our staff. Upon arrival at camp, every player must check in, which will be a pretty standard process with the added element of increased safety protocols. So a key instruction we will enforce on site during this time is players only in the check-in line, just to limit the number of people in one area and to maintain social distancing as best we can. We strongly encourage players to wear a mask while waiting in line, just as our Headfirst staff will be wearing masks throughout check-in. And additionally, each player will get their temperature checked prior to entering the facility. Before coming to camp on Monday, we do have a few action items for you. You'll receive a pretty lengthy pre-camp email. However, it's super important for you to read through in order to complete the 3 items that are listed in this section on your screen to ensure that you are well prepared heading into camp. One will be we will set a pre-screening form and an informed consent that must be submitted by Friday of this week. You will receive an email prompting you to activate your Rapsodo account, so please do so prior to arrival. And the final piece is that we have a new Headfirst on-site app in 2020. So we recommend downloading this for additional content and on-site notifications. As far as field access and seating goes post check-in, We will be asking that players or parents try to stay out of the central field area just so that we can maintain social distancing among all players and coaches and parents on site. We will direct parents to designated viewing areas for each field. And an important detail stemming off of this is that parents should definitely bring their own chair for seating. Final point on this slide is just that based on facility restrictions, we will be asking that there's one spectator, parent, or guardian for each student athlete that attends.
Thank you, Jenna. And now to dive in a little bit on the camp programming and schedule. Day one will start around 7 after we get that first wave at 7 and or noon, depending on which group you're in. We'll start up with an all-camp meeting where Brendan will address the student athletes, and then with a parents-only meeting to follow as the student athletes get warm. That will kind of set the stage for what to expect over the next couple of days and kind of lay some of those safety protocols and reverbalize them as well, just to make sure we're able to execute them on site. Then student athletes, after getting warm and going through a dynamic warm-up and getting their arms loose, they'll go straight into their defensive showcase. For the defensive showcase, you're going to be grouped by whatever position you want to showcase at. Now, one thing that you'll hear again on site, we don't mandate that you showcase with your primary position or secondary position. You can go with whatever position that you desire. If you're listed as a catcher, middle infielder, but you're just kind of feeling like an outfielder on October 5th, that's completely fine. You can showcase with the outfielders. We do ask that every student athlete showcase with at only one position. Additionally, during the defensive showcase, for the student athletes that aren't actively showcasing with the video on them and with the coaches that are in attendance watching them live on that showcase field, they'll be rotating through a full kind of camp station that will take into account some of their objective measurements like their 60-yard dash and their vertical leap and their broad jump and their overhand throwing velocity, in addition to that showcase portion too. After the defensive showcase, players will work into the offensive showcase. And again, we'll be grouping players by their positional group. Whatever group you're with for the defensive showcase, you'll likely stay with that group. And you'll rotate through, again, a handful of those objective measurements on your way to get loose and then hit live with all the college coaches watching, collect additional data and measurements during the offensive showcase off of our Rapsodo hitting unit, as well as blast motion. Day one will wrap up after these showcases with a coach connection period, which is really meant for players to be able to engage face-to-face with college coaches that are on site. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to handle that and what that looks like towards the end here as we talk about the recruiting process as well. On day two, much of the action for student athletes is going to be driven by simulated games. So every player on day two will play in 2 7-inning simulated games. Arrival time and what time you're playing and what field you're playing on. Your arrival time will depend on your player group assignment, which will be the same as it was on day one, as Jenna mentioned. And then team assignment and field assignment and who you're playing, all that will be communicated upon arrival on day two as well. We assign players to teams for their gameplay based off of positional capacity. So to make sure that every player has the right number of innings and the maximum number of innings at both their primary and their secondary defensive position. We don't take into account skill level because we don't have any sense of that before we make teams. We don't take into account grad year. The only balancing option that we take into account for making these teams are those positional groups to make sure that there aren't 5 middle infielders on one team and 2 on another. We want to make sure that those are as balanced as possible. These games also have some slightly modified rules just to make sure that things are moving quickly. Things like running the batting order continuously. We don't have a leadoff hitter and a cleanup hitter. We'll just work through that order continuously. If the 8th batter in the lineup is the last hitter of the first game, that means that second game will start up with that 9th hitter just to make sure that everybody's getting the same equal number of at-bats. We'll also start players with a 1-1 count at the plate to encourage strike throwing and facilitate action. And each inning won't be 3 outs. We'll have 5 batters per inning as well, just again to make sure that pitchers are getting that opportunity and to maximize the number of at-bats over the course of gameplay as well. In addition to the gameplay, primary pitchers on day 2 will go straight from their game innings to a bullpen where we will collect additional Rapsodo data measurements on them and also video. So if I'm a primary pitcher, I'll throw my 1 or 2 innings in the game, and then I will go directly to a bullpen with some of the Headfirst team, and this will be communicated to pitchers as they come off the mound as well, so you don't need to worry about getting lost. You'll go with the Headfirst team to throw another 16 pitches on the Rapsodo and with the video, and all of that data from day 2, the video and that Rapsodo export will all be available to you in your player folder, and will also be made available to all of the coaches in our coach database as well. In addition to the gameplay and that bullpen, there's a couple of other pieces of programming over the course of day 2. Namely, there are 2 things that we'll highlight here. One is before the first pitch for each group's first game, there will be a panel and Q&A section for parents about the recruiting process, which will feature me and Justin Kronk from the Diamond College Advisory Team. That will be dedicated. It'll be 30 to 40 minutes where we're really just there to answer all the questions that you guys as parents and student athletes have about the recruiting process as the players are on the field getting warm. Day 2 will also include an additional coach connection period after each group's second game. So they'll wrap up their gameplay, and then they'll have another chance to make sure that they're connecting with those college coaches in person that are on site. For Group 1, the second day of camp will end by 11:30 a.m. Apologies for that. And for Group 2, we would expect that camp on day 2 to end by 5 p.m. So Group 1 will be off site by 11:30 a.m. on October 6th, and Group 2 should be off the field by 5 p.m. on October 6th.
There are a few notes to just run through regarding equipment on site. The first and most important being that this is an all natural grass and dirt facility. So players may wear metal, rubber, or molded spikes if they choose to do so. But important note, please make sure to bring turfs or sneakers because we will ask players to put these on for some of the programming that takes place on site. Second, to eliminate the sharing of equipment, Headfirst is not providing helmets and dugouts, so please make sure you bring your own helmet to camp. And finally, as far as bats go, just ensure that they meet the current high school regulations. So you're free to use metal BB core or wood and so on. In 2020, a huge part of us delivering the most valuable experience we can to all of you is ensuring that we're running as safely as we possibly can. And this year we have advanced at-camp safety protocols that will be enforced and can also be accessed in their entirety on our website. A few important notes we'd like to draw your attention to and would appreciate you all complying to are listed on the screen, and I'll roll through them. On-site social distancing will be enforced in an effort to maintain social distancing as best we can. We will not be using any dugouts, and instead we'll have players using the foul lines for their equipment. Masks, while not mandatory, especially during times of physical exertion, will be strongly encouraged among players. As mentioned earlier, we will be taking temperatures upon arrival on each camp day and having each participant complete a pre-screening form. Just like attendees, our Headfirst staff will complete a pre-screening form and will be strongly encouraged to wear a mask, especially during check-in. Of course, a hallmark of our experience is coach engagement. And while this may look different this year, this will still happen on site. With that being said, it must be done responsibly, and we encourage players and coaches to wear masks, interact at a distance, and avoid any physical contact, like handshakes, throughout the entirety of camp. PPE and hand sanitizer will be available if needed on site, and as mentioned, when discussing our waived arrivals, group sizes will be limited throughout the entirety of our experience.
And now I'd love to take some time and talk about how to prepare for camp. That was kind of the logistics, the schedule, what to expect. Now we're going to talk about how to prepare for camp and think about approaching camp from an engagement and a recruiting standpoint. Now, one thing right off the bat that you'll see, this picture that you see absolutely captures the spirit of these coach connection periods and of the conversations. As Jenna mentioned, there's one really important thing here that we're going to ask the student athletes and coaches not do, which is shake hands. But that kind of spirit of connection and having those conversations, as Jenna mentioned, is a hallmark of our camps and a really important piece of the recruiting process. As you're thinking about preparing for camp from a coach engagement perspective as a student athlete, I think about breaking this up into 3 areas separated temporally. There's what you can do before camp, what you can do while you are at camp with us, and then really, really crucially, especially in this digital age of recruiting, is what to do after camp with the coach database, with that video and the data that you'll receive and the coaches will receive. So first up, before camp. Between now and next Monday, I would advise that student athletes take a look through the school list. Take a look at the coaches that are going to be on site with us in person and get to know a bit more about their programs. Also, get to look at some of the schools that won't be able to be there on site, whether because their school has a travel restriction or they are impacted by the ongoing Division I NCAA dead period. Take a look at some of those schools, highlight the ones that you're interested in, and then do some email outreach. Email a coach who's going to be there and say, hey, Coach Cardona from NYU, I'm really excited to meet you on October 5th and 6th. I'll be at the Headfirst event. My name is X. I'm really interested in NYU because of 1, 2, and 3. So doing some email outreach between now and camp, especially for those schools that are going to be there on site in person, is a really good way to lay that groundwork. So when you approach them at camp, you have a basis for that foundation, and they'll have heard your name, seen your email come through their inbox. Even if they haven't had a chance to reply to it, they'll have something to latch onto when you introduce yourself in person. Second, and a really key portion of this, is that at-camp engagement. And the key, and really what I should bold, is that first bullet point: engage, engage, engage. It's really crucial that while you have the opportunity in front of some of these coaches, you're taking advantage of that. This doesn't mean you have to chase coaches across every field and say, hey, coach, I need to go to your school and be super upfront and aggressive about it. It just means that be active and be engaged in the process while you're there. This means introducing yourself to a college coach. It also means being open to instruction and feedback from a college coach. During that gameplay, there are going to be coaches on the field with you. And if one of them says, hey, Max, I like the way you fielded that backhand ground ball and, when you were playing shortstop, here's a tip or a trick, or here's something that we do in my program that might help you on the next one as well. Be looking for those opportunities to engage, not just to say, hey, coach, I'm really interested in your school, but also to take something away instruction and feedback-wise from this experience as well. Now, one thing about this at-camp engagement is it can be pretty intimidating to walk up to a coach at your dream school and say, hey, coach, my name's Max. I'm really interested in Swarthmore, and I'd love to learn more about it. The good news is there's a lot of organic opportunities that the camp programming and also the support of our Headfirst team helps create a lot of these opportunities for you. As we mentioned in kind of that program overview, that schedule overview, there's going to be dedicated chunks of camp on each day that is really designed just for that coach engagement. And so taking advantage of those opportunities is one great way. Also, coaches are going to be on the field during these games, so take advantage of the context of baseball to start some of these conversations really organically as well. Ask for feedback on your swing. Ask for how their program coaches the double cut from a ball in the right field corner if you find yourself in that situation. Take advantage of the organic opportunities that arise so you can create some of this engagement with those coaches that are on site. And as I mentioned, the final step is following up with coaches after camp. And to me, this means, yes, you absolutely should send a follow-up note to the coaches that you are able to connect with in person and say, hey, Coach Cardona, it was really good to meet you in person. Thank you so much for teaching me X, Y, or Z out at shortstop on field 2. I'm really looking forward and would love to connect again soon, right? Sending that follow-up to coaches that you connected with. The other side of it is leveraging this camp database of about 200 or so college coaches that will be receiving all of your camp data and video. After camp, Each player will receive much of their video apart from the live gameplay. They'll be receiving their showcase video offensively. They'll be receiving their pitching showcase video. They'll be receiving blast and Rapsodo data. You'll be receiving this whole chunk of verified data and video that you can use to push proactively out to coaches and to send to coaches at schools that you're interested in. So take advantage of that as well, and use that that data and that video as one more excuse, so to speak, to reach out to coaches that you're interested in as well. I mentioned there'll be some great coaches there that are confirmed on site in person. There's also this whole list of our coach database that won't be able to be there on site. We're really happy with the coach list that we will have on site. It represents some bi-coastalness. It represents a lot of really good high academic programs. Just earlier today, Chapman and Caltech were both added. Johns Hopkins will be there, some West Coast schools, some Northeast schools. There also will be, it's worth noting, a handful of schools that won't be able to be dressed in their camp gear because there are some leagues have some wonky rules right now about how coaches are conducting their recruiting off their own campuses, and if they can be wearing literally, you know, a NESCAC, their school T-shirt. There will be some additional coaches who might be in incognito, or they'll be in their plainclothes coach uniform, but there are also a handful of those types of coaches who will be on site as well. In addition to that, as I mentioned, all of your data and video will be sent to that entire coach database. All those Division I schools, all those high academic schools that are unable to make it out, will be pushing your video and data out to them. And then, as I mentioned, you guys as student athletes using that database to your advantage and reaching out to some of them as well, and pushing proactively to Coach Fitz at UChicago and say, hey, Coach Fitz, I'm really interested in UChicago. Here's my verified video and data from this Headfirst event last week.
We have a couple key partnerships that we want to highlight for your use and benefit. The first being OnPeak. For travel accommodations, we partner with OnPeak so that families can book directly through their platform in order to get the best hotel rates in the area. So you can learn more through our website by going to the Enrolled Athletes tab and then clicking into the travel and accommodations for our baseball events. NextPro is our awesome video partner who records, tags, and distributes every pitch and at bat from our camp to our college coaches. NextPro collects defensive showcase and game footage on players that will be sent to coaches even if you do not pay for any of their video packages. However, you can buy access to have this footage in your own hands and to distribute on your own terms.
Awesome. Now we're going to transition to the live Q&A portion. A couple questions have already come in that we can certainly start with, but just to make sure. So if you're on here, to send a question, you can just find that questions tab in the GoToWebinar toolbar, type it in there, send it in, and we'll get to answering those now. If you have to jump off for whatever reason, you want to catch the last, the second half of the debates tonight, or you have dinner plans, or have to go back to work, have a meeting, anything. We won't forget about these, so if you just want to put your question in there, say I got to run, and then dip out, then we will follow up with you either tonight or tomorrow to make sure that you get all your questions answered. We'll be answering most of them kind of live, so to speak, on the air, and also answering some via chat. So feel free to just start dropping questions in there, and we can head out. The other piece is, this is certainly not your first, last, or only chance to get your questions answered. If you have questions that come up after tonight, feel free to pop onto our website, and we have a live chat function where you can chat directly with a member of our team. Send us an email, give us a call. We're more than happy to connect and make sure that you have everything that you need. Jenna, the first question that we have is one that I'm going to put out towards you. The video, we mentioned NextPro as a video partner. We mentioned that showcase bullpen, the video during the offensive showcase. When it comes to video and data, what do players walk away from? What are the different types of video that we're collecting that college coaches are getting? And then what do these student athletes walk away with on October 6th and later as they get that delivered back to them?
Yes. So as mentioned, when it comes to Next Pro records all of the game footage and all of the defensive showcase video. The video that's in Headfirst's hands is actually our offensive showcase video and our pitching showcase video. So for Next Pro, all of that video is typically available to players and coaches about 10 business days after the event. But for Headfirst video, about maybe just under a week from the end of camp, you will receive essentially a Google folder with all of your data from camp, these reports, these blast and Rapsodo reports, your videos from your offensive showcase, and if you're a pitcher, from your pitcher showcase, and then your objective measurements within this PDF. So you'll have the separate reports and videos, and then you'll also receive this branded PDF that will include all of your objective measurements, your academic information, your personal information, that links out to separate videos as well for you to pass along to coaches on your own terms.
Awesome. And next question, there's a couple questions that I'm going to kind of roll into one because they all happen to touch on what pitchers' schedules and innings and everything look like. So the first is, what is the showcase schedule for a secondary pitcher? For a secondary pitcher, what I would advise you do is on day one, you should go with your primary positional group. If you're, for example, a middle infielder who also pitches, on day one, you go with the middle infielders, you do that showcase portion, you do the offensive showcase, you go through all of your programming. And then on day two, as a secondary pitcher, you will still be assigned innings in the game. So whether or not you are a pitcher only, a primary pitcher, or a secondary pitcher, we'll be assigning you innings in that live gameplay on day two, as long as your arm is up for it. How many innings that is, which is another one of these questions that I'm going to kind of roll in here, has to do with if you are a primary or a secondary. Secondaries should expect to throw 1 or 2 innings on day 2. Primaries should expect to throw 2 or 3 innings on day 2, depending on what the breakdown looks like, and then really importantly, how your arm feels. One thing that we do is, on that second day of camp, every pitcher on the way into the complex will check in with a member of the Headfirst team. You'll say what your name is, we'll make sure you have what team you're on, and then we'll also say what innings you're pitching. So I'll go in, check in, and they'll say, all right, Max, you're throwing innings 3 and 4 of your team's game. How does your arm feel? Do you feel up for it? If you say, I just threw in the Arizona Fall Classic, my arm's a little tight, maybe I only want 1, great, you can let us know, and we adjust those innings to make sure that it's only what you are comfortable with. But all pitchers have the chance to throw live in those games. That showcase bullpen, that Rapsodo and video bullpen that we mentioned, that will be for primary pitchers on day 2. So if you're a primary pitcher, as soon as you come off the mound in your live gameplay, we'll send you straight to that Rapsodo bullpen. Secondary pitchers will not, because they will have gone through that showcase on day 1, but primary pitchers will have the chance to have that video and Rapsodo collected. Jenna, a really important question that always comes in. These are some, we're talking about chunks of the day where they'll be on site. What are the opportunities like for food, water, et cetera, everything on site to make sure that these players are hydrated and fueled up for their baseball action?
Yes, so important question, especially about the water piece. We will not have a single, any sort of water jugs on site where there will be mass refilling. So what we've decided to do is just strongly recommend people to come with water bottles full and aplenty. And we will also have single-use water bottles in coolers on each field for your use as well. In terms of food, luckily with the wave breakdowns, you should be having plenty of time throughout the day to kind of fuel up before and after. But there won't be concession on site, but there will be within the app a little tab that directs you to any local food in the area if you need to fuel up before or after your wave.
Awesome. And one more has come in, and Jen, I'm gonna toss this your way back to back if that's all right. And that's about some of those pre-camp action items, specifically that pre-screening questionnaire and also the Rapsodo. What do families need to do to make sure that they're set to go on those 2 fronts before they show up the morning of October 5th?
Yeah, so the pre-screening form is pretty much your standard COVID pre-screening form right now that you would see at any kind of event that you would attend, or even some different, just anything that you would attend in public. And that is just going to ask you simple questions regarding symptoms, or if you've traveled to any hotspots in the past 2 weeks, if anybody in your family has recently been exposed. And then as we see any affirmatives potentially come through, we will address those one-off with families just to make sure that you're able to come on site for camp. In terms of the Rapsodo email, you will receive an email directly to your player email, which will have an activation link, and you will sign in even if you have used Rapsodo before. So you do need to log in because this is specific to our event in order for us to run you under your own self in Rapsodo. We do have backup plans, but ideally you can log in, activate your account so we can run you under your own name. In the case that you don't activate prior to camp, we do have test players, and it's just a little bit more work on our end. So if you can make sure that you click that link prior to camp, that would be great.
Awesome, thank you. And I will add for that pre-screening form, it's a pretty quick just Google form for you guys to complete. It's not the toughest thing in the world. I do advise you read through it, and we certainly want you guys to answer, read carefully, answer carefully, and answer truthfully. But it's not a whole lot. And then getting that Rapsodo executed makes everybody's lives a bit easier when we're on site. And then afterwards, to make sure that we're able to, in a timely fashion, turn around that data and video and send it out to you. It looks like those are the questions that have come in. One thing that I'll say is there's one question that we often get, which is, how do I stand out to college coaches while we're there, right? What should I do when I'm on site to turn some heads? And what I always tell student athletes is it's really, really important that you as a player play your game. If you're a contact hitter who hits line drives, don't show up on October 6th and say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 5 for 5 with 6 home runs, because that's not going to go your way, right? If you're a pitcher who throws 77 to 81 and has some good off speed and really focuses on command, don't show up expecting to all of a sudden throw 92. Play within yourself and play your game, and then use that to highlight your best self. So that's the advice that I generally give. Jenna, do you have any advice that you give to student athletes before camp, or anything that you would tack on there?
I was going to say something super similar, Max. I think the only thing I would build off of there is beyond making sure that you're playing within yourself and representing your brand well. I think that goes for both as an athlete and as a person. Coaches are looking for fits within their program, within their program's culture. So if you're a shy kid, or if you're a really outgoing kid, it's okay to just be yourself on site and play to your strengths, because every coach is looking for a different player on site, and you should be comfortable just kind of playing to your strengths in all of those situations.
Yep, and the one thing that you'll hear from me and Justin on day 2 as well is it is really important that student athletes and families be proactive in the recruiting process too. And obviously you guys are off to a really good start by being at an event like this and this fall, when I know recruiting right now looks so different and is so difficult for student athletes and also for college coaches. But that proactivity, putting yourself out there, playing your best game, continuing to develop, really crucially, keeping the pedal down on the baseball side and also on the academic side, and putting yourself in the best position to showcase, and then to have some of those conversations. It looks like we're fresh out of questions. As I mentioned, this is certainly not your last or only chance to get your questions answered. So if you have more questions that come in before we get to see you on October 5th, always please feel free to reach out, send us an email, give us a call and chat with one of our team members. And then, as I mentioned, if you pop onto our website, there'll be a little pop-up in the bottom right corner that I'm sure you see all around the internet nowadays, with that live chat function where you can talk live with, it's not a bot, it's a member of our team. There's also some good pieces on our blog, both recent and from last summer, summer before, about how to prepare for camp and how to go about the recruiting process. So feel free to take a look at some of those. really excited to meet all of you face to face in a week or so. On behalf of everybody at Headfirst, thank you so much for taking the time this evening, and we're really looking forward to getting the chance to meet you out in Arizona. Thank you.